I'm Jolene Teresa.
And I'm Kim Burley. And today we're going to talk about choosing venues.
Now, we've had a couple of venues with Studio X itself, and you're now dealing with venues with Kim Burley's Titty Tour.
That I am.
So we're going to talk about the key things you need to think about when you're looking at a venue, and we're going to talk about some of the things you just kind of have to get used to. So first and foremost is space. Now, depending on what type of show you're putting on, you're going to want different types of space. For us, we prefer to have the aerial rig, which means we need at least a 20 by 30 foot space, depending on height, and we also need a certain height. So space in general, we're looking at width and height. If a venue fits 200 people, but it only fits 100 once we put the aerial rig in, it's not really something we can use. If the ceiling height is only 9 feet, then we really can't put the aerial rig. We could, but not for anything useful. So for us, space has to do with height and width of the actual performance area, but we could make it work without it, and we have. What do you think for Kim Burley's Titty Tour? What are you looking for space-wise?
Space-wise, because it's burlesque-based, I don't have to have the aerial rig, although I would love it. So if it does have the space for the aerial rig, that's great. But because it's a more intimate show, I'm looking for more, how many people can it fit?
Width.
Yes. Because burlesque can be a floor show, so it doesn't necessarily have to have a stage or anything like that. I'm really looking more for how many people can I cram into this space safely and
comfortably.
And they can see what's going on.
Right. So keep in mind, size matters. On top of that, you want to think about the audience's perspective. So Kim kind of just touched on this with people being able to see. If you have just a random bar or brewery or an open space, there's no stage, there's no indication, that's great if you have people in the air or above seated eye height. If you're doing a show where people are doing floor work, then only the people in the front are going to see that. And if it's one person or one performer, fine. But if it's 5 or 6 performers out of 10, you're going to get audience members who are kind of thinking, what did I pay for just to hear music? Because I can't see any of this. Because I can tell you, as a person who's about 5 feet tall, if I'm 4 rows back, I only need one person to stand up and I literally won't be able to see anything. So for us, we like to do some type of stadium seating in the round venues, anything where the stage is substantially higher than the rows of seating or lower, because we want people to be able to see everything. But with you, that's not a problem. You'd almost rather it be flat so you can weave in and out of the guests.
Yes. With a floor show, it's definitely great to be able to go into the audience. So that's something that I'm looking for. And then, of course, if there's not any pre-set chairs or stage even, stuff like that, then I'm being able to work with the venue on how I can arrange the seating so that we can weave in and out.
Right, which is the best for that type of show. So you can see where different type of shows have different requirements for venues. So we talked about size and we talked about the audience perspective, the audience being able to see and interact with the show. But another thing to think about is the performers. If your venue is outdoors and it's a weather-ridden area, or even if it's a hot area and they're using metal equipment, that might not be great for newer performers. Do they have a place to warm up and get ready? And if so, is it heated or air conditioned? Do they have a designated bathroom? They don't need one, but they're going to need access to a bathroom. So think about your performers. Where are they getting ready? How are they getting to the stage or performance area, which could be from the audience? Mm-hmm. Which you've done many times.
Many times.
With the stadium seating, it's a little bit harder, especially because getting up to the top of that stadium seating, you have to actually walk up it sometimes. But with your shows, people could easily start from anywhere.
Yeah.
And how would that affect lighting?
It's it's interesting, and you have to think about that when you're looking at a venue. Do they have lighting people, and what does that lighting look like? If it's a set lighting that's just focused on a stage area, then
hold a flashlight. Just kidding.
then
Maybe.
it's then you don't get lighting. I've done shows where
Right.
they've told us, if you are not on the stage, we're not going to be able to take photos of you, or your videos are going to be too dark. And that's part of that communication and deciding if that's the kind of vibe or show that you want to put on.
Right. So we have size, we have audience perspective, and we have the understanding of the performers, what their needs are. Another really big thing for me, I know, is not just cost, because you want to stay within what your budget is by going backwards. Basically, if this is how much all in, not just the venue, but this is how much it's going to cost you total, how many tickets do you need to sell at what price to at least cover that? And can you realistically sell that many tickets? But the communication in the venue. I can tell you that if I get a response email from, I'm not going to call them out, but it rhymes with Smivesmation, if I see that in a signature, I know I'm done, because it's going to take weeks before I can even get to the person who actually communicates seeing a venue, booking a venue, talking about fees. I know their fees change depending on who communicates what to them. And then there are some venues where within 24 hours they've gotten back to you. Here are the clear fees. Here are photos. Here are dimensions. Sometimes you get a floor plan, a lighting plan. You get lighting tech and audio tech forms. That is so easy communication-wise, because I know what I'm getting into. I can answer any questions they have. And I can send it to my insurance, who now can tell me if they can insure this or not based on what we're trying to do here. So communication is huge, and you're now dealing with that.
That I am.
Tell us more about that.
So with the Titty Tour, we are looking for new venues. We have,
Because it's a tour.
It's a tour, so we're not just doing one.
Gotta go everywhere for it to be a tour.
So we're looking at different venues in different areas that maybe we haven't broached or we haven't seen shows in before, and so we're spending a lot of emails. A lot of places are just not getting back to us at all,
Right.
or I'm meeting with the place and then saying, hey, yeah, let's book, and then a week or two goes by
No response.
and no response. So the communication is a little scarce right now. Also coming into the summer months in New England, at least,
Right.
is a big time, especially
Depending
if
on where you are.
Yeah, especially if there's any sort of outdoor option, which
Yes.
with burlesque, you can sort of have that a little bit more than...
Kind of makes sense, because you're going to take clothes off anyways.
Yeah, if it's hot, it's hot. So just the communication and making sure that we're following up in a professional manner.
Right.
And-
Not like, hey, here's the 7 emails I sent. You ever think about responding?
And making sure that we're not hounding them, but still making sure that they know that we might still be interested.
Right, because if a venue really wants to work with you, they're super easy. I can tell you a venue I spoke with recently within 24 hours, and this is a place where I have to travel to even look at it. Hint, hint. Within 24 hours of me emailing them, we had already hopped on a call, discussed the details, discussed the marketing, discussed our budget, scheduled a time to go see it, and she sent me all of the documentation required with different fees, different photos, different layouts they've done, the lighting and audio tech forms, the floor plan and dimensions, which was fantastic. This is someone who saw what we had to offer and said, yep, that'll work, let's get going. And that leads me into another point. When you're talking about venues, you might want to be lenient with your date or time if there's a venue you really want. So for us, the venue we use in Worcester, we use the same date every year. We've made it clear to them we really, really like being on the day of the Pride Festival, and they've made it clear that there are some people who don't want to be on that day because it's so hard to get to the venue if you're not already at Pride. But that's kind of our people, so we like being during Pride. But other times, if we're looking at a venue, instead of saying, well, it has to be April 9th, we'll say, do you have a Saturday in April or May? It allows that scheduling to happen if they don't have anything available. And we like to plan ahead, but not all venues like to plan ahead.
That is true.
Sometimes they're like, that's next year. And we're like, yeah, it is. Can we have it? So remember that size matters. Remember that your audience perspective matters. How your performers are going to work in the space matters. That communication and just, I guess, understanding with your venue is really important. Couple other things we want to think about. Parking, flooring type like carpeting and heels. The load-in, which we just learned recently at an event, whether or not it's easy load-in at the venue, whether there's events going on at the venue, around the venue, can people get to the venue?
Yeah, accessibility for all types of people.
Audio. Do they have audio and lighting? Do they have techs that know how to use those? Are the acoustics good, or is every time you play a loud song going to hurt people's ears?
Is it easy to find?
Yeah. Yep. That's a good one, because we have talked to people before where the vibe that they're going for is very secretive, and that's great. But if you can't look up where the venue is and what it looks like, sometimes people don't want to go to it. Another thing that we have talked about before is, what is the perception of the venue? So depending on what type of show you want to put on, what is the perception of the venue? For example, JCCs, Jewish Community Centers, have fantastic auditoriums for shows. But not all JCCs are going to be interested in putting on a burlesque or a pole show, simply because that's not the type of events they're looking to put on. And although the event space may be perfect for us, pushing a venue like that to convince them, it just might not work out. And you kind of have to think about that. What are they trying to do versus what are you trying to do, and does it align?
Yep. And who are they attracting?
Right. And is their audience going to be interested? Because another thing that venues can help with is marketing. Maybe they don't have a huge marketing system or reach, but you could be marketing to new people, which could help grow your event. The last thing I want to go over is venue indoor-outdoor situations. Now, weather is definitely going to play a role because, yes, rain, snow, whatever it may be, temperature, but also the sun. If you have newer performers, you're using equipment and it's hot, it's not going to work out well. If you have newer performers and the sun is blaring in their face and they can't see, it's not going to go well. If the outdoor area is dirt, it might not go well. Or if it just rained and it's grass and your equipment is sinking into it, it's not going to go well. So think of everything ahead of time and really play out in your mind, what is it I want and what are all the things that could go wrong? Do we have a backup plan for that?
We also want to consider that venues are businesses too, and things happen.
Right.
We've had a few situations in the past where we had a venue that gave up our dates, and we had to work with that venue to secure a new date, and really be...
Luckily.
Yes, because we wanted to work with that venue.
Right.
We've also in the past had a situation where a venue couldn't accommodate a couple of dates that we'd had set in the future, and they weren't sure if we were going to be able to rebook those.
Right.
So staying in touch with a lot of other venues to let them know we're interested, and making sure that we continue to have that outreach with local venues so we can continue with the show.
So remembering that these issues are not necessarily the venue's fault. Right? Maybe they didn't know that they weren't going to be available this date. We've had issues with power outages, flooding, permitting, zoning. Maybe they don't know. So we want to be polite about that and just kind of have a backup plan with the venues that we're choosing. Maybe something that we could use or that is available and isn't ideal, but it would work for a crunch. So all in all, when you're looking at venues, size matters. Pay attention to the size. If it's too big, maybe you're not going to be able to fill that. If it's too small, maybe you do 2 shows. Remembering that your audience's perspective matters, your crew and cast, how they function in the space, matters, communication, budgeting matters, and then just think about all the little things. Walk through it as if it was your show. And if you can't sit down and watch your show, maybe ask someone for honest feedback. And if people give you honest feedback, do not argue it. Just say, thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate it. You don't need to justify it. They don't want to hear it. You ask them for that feedback. But keep that. And if you're consistently hearing the same thing from people, really love the show, music is fantastic, but I can never see the floor work, then you know you have an issue there where people can't actually see that part. So you either need to figure it out where the audience can see it, or to tell your performers no more floor work. So figure out what it is you're looking for, figure out if the venue vibes with you, and hopefully we can come to one of your shows in the future.